The story of Nebuchadnezzar, as told in the Bible, is a fascinating account of power, faith, and redemption. Nebuchadnezzar II, king of Babylon, is a central figure in the book of Daniel, where his trajectory is marked by prophetic dreams, acts of pride and miraculous encounters with the God of Israel. From his rise as a powerful monarch, through dramatic episodes such as the fiery furnace and the humiliation he suffered due to his arrogance, Nebuchadnezzar's narrative offers profound lessons about the transience of human kingdoms and the importance of humility and recognition of divine sovereignty. Part 1. The Rise of Nebuchadnezzar and His Dreams. Nebuchadnezzar II, king of Babylon, is a central figure in the Bible, especially in the book of Daniel. He is presented as a powerful monarch, known for his military conquests and the grandeur of his kingdom. At a crucial moment in his story, Nebuchadnezzar experiences a disturbing dream that requires interpretation. In this dream, he sees a colossal statue composed of different materials: a head of gold, chest and arms of silver, belly and thighs of bronze, legs of iron, and feet partly of iron and partly of clay. Deeply troubled by the meaning of the dream, Nebuchadnezzar summons all the wise men, magicians, and soothsayers of his kingdom, demanding that they not only interpret the dream but also tell him what the dream was without him revealing it. Unable to fulfill this impossible task, the wise men face the king's wrath. Among the Jewish exiles in Babylon is Daniel, a young man known for his wisdom and piety. Daniel, upon hearing about the death decree hanging over the wise men of Babylon, requests time to pray to God and seek the revelation of the dream and its meaning. God answers Daniel's prayers, revealing both the dream and its interpretation to him. Daniel is brought before Nebuchadnezzar and begins to describe the dream and its meaning. He explains that the statue represents a sequence of kingdoms that will arise in history. The head of gold symbolizes Nebuchadnezzar himself and his Babylonian empire, described as glorious and powerful. The other parts of the statue represent future kingdoms, each inferior to the previous one, until it reaches the feet of iron and clay, symbolizing a divided and fragile kingdom. Daniel also reveals that a stone, not cut by human hands, strikes the feet of the statue and completely destroys it. This stone represents the kingdom of God, which will be established and never destroyed, surpassing all human kingdoms. Impressed by the accuracy of the interpretation and the revelation of the dream itself, Nebuchadnezzar acknowledges the greatness of Daniel's God. He promotes Daniel to a position of high authority in the kingdom and recognizes that the God of the Jews is a God of gods and Lord of kings, and a revealer of mysteries. This first part of Nebuchadnezzar's story not only highlights the rise of his power and the grandeur of his kingdom but also introduces a recurring theme: the confrontation between human pride and divine sovereignty. The interpretation of Nebuchadnezzar's dream by Daniel sets a precedent for future events, showing that despite the power of human kingdoms, it is the kingdom of God that will prevail eternally. Part 2. The Fiery Furnace. The story of Nebuchadnezzar and the fiery furnace is one of the most dramatic and memorable narratives in the book of Daniel, exemplifying the clash between human authority and unwavering faith. At the height of his power and self-confidence, Nebuchadnezzar orders the construction of a colossal golden image, towering about 90 feet high and 9 feet wide, erected on the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. This image symbolizes his own grandeur and the might of his empire. To dedicate this image, Nebuchadnezzar summons all the high officials of the realm: satraps, prefects, governors, advisors, treasurers, judges, magistrates, and all the provincial authorities, to gather and worship the image. A herald proclaims that, to the sound of musical instruments, everyone must bow down and worship the golden image that the king has set up. Anyone who refuses will be immediately thrown into a blazing furnace. Among those present are 3 young Jewish men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who have been elevated to positions of authority in the province of Babylon through Daniel's earlier intervention. However, these 3 refuse to worship the image, remaining faithful to their God, who forbids idolatry. When some jealous Chaldeans report Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to the king, Nebuchadnezzar, furious, summons them. Before the king, the 3 young men stand firm in their refusal, stating that their God is able to deliver them from the fiery furnace. They declare with unwavering faith that even if God does not rescue them, they will not bow down to the golden image. This response further enrages Nebuchadnezzar, who orders that the furnace be heated 7 times hotter than usual. He commands the strongest men in his army to tie up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and throw them into the furnace. The intensity of the fire is such that the flames kill the soldiers who throw the 3 young men in. However, when Nebuchadnezzar looks into the furnace, he is astonished. He sees not only the 3 young men walking freely in the midst of the fire, but also a 4th man, whose appearance is described as like a son of the gods. Nebuchadnezzar approaches the opening of the furnace and calls Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to come out. As they emerge, all present observe that the fire had not harmed their bodies, their hair was not singed, their robes were not scorched, and there was no smell of fire on them. Impressed and recognizing the power of the God of the Jews, Nebuchadnezzar declares that there is no other God who can save in this way. He decrees that anyone of any nation or language who speaks against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego will be severely punished. The king then promotes the 3 young men to even higher positions in the province of Babylon. This part of Nebuchadnezzar's story not only demonstrates God's power to save those who are faithful to him, but also highlights the courage and unwavering faith of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. The event leaves an indelible mark on Nebuchadnezzar's mind, leading him to acknowledge the superiority of the God of the Jews over all other gods and reinforcing the message that true worship belongs solely to him. But first, I need to ask you, are you enjoying? Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next videos and leave a like. Part 3: The Humiliation and Redemption of Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar, the mighty king of Babylon, undergoes a significant turn in his life that leads him to confront divine sovereignty in a deep and personal way. After the events involving Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, where he witnessed the miraculous power of the God of the Jews, Nebuchadnezzar continues to reign over his vast empire. However, his spiritual journey does not end there. In a subsequent period, Nebuchadnezzar has another crucial dream, in which he sees a great tree in the midst of the land, visible to all and abundant in fruit, providing shelter for the birds of the sky and food for all living creatures. However, as he watches, a celestial being descends from heaven and orders the tree to be cut down and its leaves stripped, leaving only the stump fixed in the ground. Deeply troubled, Nebuchadnezzar seeks once again the interpretation of his wise men and counselors. This time, Daniel is summoned to interpret the dream. With his divinely granted ability, Daniel reveals that the tree symbolizes Nebuchadnezzar, whose kingdom is vast and whose dominion extends far. However, the cutting down of the tree represents an imminent judgment upon the king, ordained by heaven, because of his arrogance and pride. Daniel warns Nebuchadnezzar that he will be driven away from mankind and live like an animal of the field, eating grass like cattle, for a period of 7 times, until he acknowledges that the Most High God rules over the kingdoms of men and gives them to anyone he wishes. Despite Daniel's warning, Nebuchadnezzar continues to live in pride until the prophecy is fulfilled. In a sudden and unexpected moment, while walking in the palace he himself built, his reason is suddenly taken away from him. He is driven from his throne and for 7 years lives like an animal, roaming the fields and eating grass like cattle. At the end of the appointed time, as foreseen by Daniel, Nebuchadnezzar is restored to his reason and his kingdom. In a testimony of humility and recognition of God's sovereignty, Nebuchadnezzar praises the Most High, declaring his greatness and power. He publicly acknowledges that the kingdom belongs to God, whose dominion is eternal and whose rule extends through all generations. The restored king issues a decree commanding all in his kingdom to honor and reverence the God of Daniel, the living and eternal God. Thus, the story of Nebuchadnezzar culminates not only in his physical and mental restoration, but also in his spiritual renewal. His journey, marked by highs and lows, pride and humiliation, stands as a powerful testimony to divine intervention in the lives of those who acknowledge God's sovereignty over all things. The story of Nebuchadnezzar, as we have discussed, is truly fascinating and full of profound lessons. We begin with his rise to power as the great king of Babylon, highlighting his encounter with the God of the Jews through prophetic dreams interpreted by Daniel. This first encounter revealed not only the grandeur of his own kingdom, but also the transience of all earthly kingdoms before the eternal kingdom of God. We then explore the dramatic event of the fiery furnace, where Nebuchadnezzar witnessed God's miraculous power in protecting Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego from the burning fire, which led him to recognize the superiority of the God of the Jews over all other gods. Finally, the story culminated in Nebuchadnezzar's personal humiliation and redemption. After a second disturbing dream interpreted by Daniel, the king experienced a period of insanity, living like a wild animal. This period of trial led him to recognize God's absolute sovereignty over his life and over all earthly kingdoms. At the end of the 7 times, Nebuchadnezzar was restored to his position as king and publicly proclaimed the greatness and power of the living God. This journey of Nebuchadnezzar, full of ups and downs, of pride and humility, offers a powerful reflection on the importance of recognizing divine sovereignty in our own lives. It is a story that reminds us that despite our earthly achievements and our apparent power, it is only through recognizing God that we find true restoration and inner peace. So that's today's video. I hope you liked it. To the next.